I think just, you got a really short synopsis of what those two got, and
Sounded good.
and Ashley, the emojis that she does and checking in with every
Yes.
kid's in the classroom, and
They're really based
They-
on that movie,
yeah.
the Disney movie,
Yeah.
Feelings or whatever.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
Yeah, it was really
it was a good, it was good for them to share. You could see, they would have went for 3 hours if we'd have let them,
Yes.
because
Yeah,
they're
I-
passionate about what they do and how they're doing it. I kind of had to speed them up just to kind of, we got a lot of other things to cover, but you could see, as I think Steve and Sarah would attest, that they're passionate about making
Yeah.
sure kids are, comfortable checking with Jimmy. So that also helps, that we never had before either. There's another way that we kind of make sure how kids are. So,
Any questions for Frank? Moving on. Dave,
Yeah, they've
Director of
Covered.
Teaching and
Right.
Learning.
covered everything. The only thing I would add is, last Friday, as we moved to distance learning, the teachers in the secondary got the day to plan for distance learning. So hopefully they got some time for that and, can continue to improve the product that we had last year. I know they're all working hard to do that. And then in front of you, you have the, next workshop that's coming up and kind of continuing the idea of differentiated professional development, getting teachers what they need, not just one size fits all. So kind of trying to model what we would like teachers to do with students as we deliver professional development to teachers. So you see in front of you, it's a half day, but it's full of professional learning. So I know I don't get a lot of feedback, so I think no feedback is good. I don't hear complaints that they're not, getting stuff they don't need, so I'm thinking it's all good. I didn't get a lot of feedback for the last one, so I'm thinking that's great.
It's over, so that's not gonna work.
I'm working on
Now
it.
you have feedback.
So other than that, just questions from what Sarah and Steve and Mike reported from the curriculum committee meeting, or questions? That's all I have.
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Dave, we had some discussion about how we're gonna do testing. You guys were gonna talk about it in administration. Have you guys had a chance to?
No, that'll be next Tuesday, and then it's just every week or 2 weeks, Josh, as the district assessment coordinator, gets a assessment update from MDE. And so it's always evolving, and I know he's in a network and then on a different network, and just, what we're doing for assessment. We will continue to do the STAR assessments for those students that are here and offer it for those that aren't here, so that we can continue to kind of keep a
Yeah,
handle on that.
we know we have to bring kids in somehow. We'll
Yep.
get them in,
Yep,
we'll,
that's our directives
Yep.
as of this point.
at this point, this change, I don't see that changing. The other thing that we did do was that I recommended that Jason, Mr. Savage asked about pre-ACT for ninth grade, if we still wanted to continue with that, and I told him to do that. So we're bringing in any ninth grader who wants to take the pre-ACT test. That kind of gives them an idea of where they kind of want to go with the Bridges Academy and some of those things too. And then we have something to use data down the point from a pre-ACT to an ACT when they take that. So I told him, let's go ahead and do that. So we're still planning on doing the pre-ACT as well.
Since you're mentioning that, the 10th graders never got that. They're not doing anything. They
That, we
got
just
this.
started it this year.
Yep.
For ninth grade.
First year of ninth
They
grade.
did it before for our older.
The Explorer test.
That was Explore. It wasn't the pre-ACT, it was deputy test.
It's
Kind of similar. But it doesn't,
So we didn't
you
have
can't
that.
correlate it to the
Done
ACT because it's sort of similar, but you can't compare apples to apples. Now with doing the pre-ACT, we can, because it's kind of aligned, if that makes sense. If I'm saying that right, David.
So it's based on, there's the Explore part of it where they choose, career, and then what will you have to do based on the scores that you have? What courses will you be taking, the next 3-4 years, that kind of stuff. So it's used as a guidance tool.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Dave. All right, moving on, facilities. We did meet November 11th. I did not take notes, because that is Brian's job. Brian's not here. But we met with Norson, Woodseth, Superintendent Mulberg, and Brian and I. Just a quick update. on the project. We're still at roughly that $30,000 in our contingency, so that's holding, which is a good thing.
We don't anticipate that staying though.
No, but it's holding.
It's holding, but
Yeah.
we need to be prepared to maybe 30,000 isn't a lot as we start digging into other parts of that remodel piece. So just, we talked about being
FYI.
prepared to FYI.
Elementary addition classrooms, the roofs are going on. They'll be weather tight here before long. The auditorium, as you've seen, the precast walls are all up, on schedule there. Concrete is roughly sometime in January. They're hoping to pour the floor. Wood shop is framed up. They're just kind of taking their time on that because there is no urgency. We don't plan on being in there till next school year. The parking lot, it was just patching in there. That money is set aside in long-term facility, correct?
Yep, and capital for early childhood.
For the parking lot back here, the early childhood. And that is about the extent of our meeting, unless I'm missing anything.
Nope,
It was
that's
very
about it.
short.
Just to walk through and just update.
So, any questions on that? All right, moving on to personnel. We did meet on the 4th. As you can see, we've got 3 action items. First one is consider principal contract update. And what we talked about there was adding 3 additional days to our principal contracts. And then Dave, the teaching director of teaching and learning. And the reason for that is with all the COVID, they've worked 6 weekends in a row, I believe, Saturdays, Sundays, all the extra tracking and things. It would be 3 additional days to their contract, which would total roughly $4,600 in total. So personnel committee would recommend that, and I would actually make that a motion to extend.
Kind of clarify, Scott, it
Yes, sir.
wasn't 3 additional days. We paid out 3 vacation days because they didn't get a chance to use their vacation
Correct.
days. Many of them have, some of them have 15 days that they didn't use. So 3 was being very
Yeah.
light. I mean, but it was a gesture to say, we understand that you didn't get to use a lot of your vacation days over the summer and the school, because they have to use them in their contracts by the end of December or they lose those days, which is different than some people. But so we paid out 3 days of vacation.
I actually had vacation on my notes.
I'll just clarify. I keep you in the line.
I'll second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
This is just for this year's contract.
Yes, sir. Yep. Yes, that is correct.
And it's only $4,300 for 3 people,
4 people.
4 people.
4 people.
It was like 4,600.
4,600.
About $1,200 a piece for those days.
That's not a very big thank you.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I will say that the administrators were appreciative of those. I mean, so it was better than, I mean, they appreciated it. So,
Next action item, you can see is addendum to our bus contract. We did meet with Eric and Christie from Cornfield Bus Service. Not knowing where we were going to end up, whether we were going to be full distance learning, if that was just in the high school, if it was K through 12, if we were going to do meals, or how we were going to do that. As a personnel committee, we would recommend that we pay 85% of the current contract. And then if we are in full distance learning, and if we choose to do the meal delivery, that will be part of Cornfield Bus Service. And then 85% on snow days. There's not going to be hardly any snow days because we'll be in distance learning or.
well, it depends on if elementary is.
Exactly. And then 95% of the special ed. You want to speak to that a little bit,
Sure.
Mike?
The executive order that just came out from the governor this last week advised we will get reimbursed for special ed. They encouraged the contractors to give a discount for fuel savings, which Eric and I had shared that 95% would reduce that fuel savings of costs that they're not losing on using on those special ed routes. So we would get refunded back that percentage
That
of
changed in the
special ed.
last 2 weeks. or
Since
3
we
weeks.
met, yes, that just came out in the executive order. Prior to that, we were not being reimbursed for that. And partly being because superintendents, urged MDE to say, bus contractors, if we go distance learning and then 2 weeks or a month later, we bring kids back, how do we bring them back if they don't have employees or drivers? So they need to keep people there. So we're on a short call of back and forth. So that kind of came through the executive order.
And just, we talked about this quite a while. Cornshell Bus Service is doing a lot of behind the scene things
Oh, yeah.
that I didn't even realize. And, Superintendent Malberg and Cornshell's had to share with Sean and I as far as tracking and changing routes and picking up kids every other day. It's just a lot of different things that they're doing. So we appreciate what they're
And they
doing.
also do the routes
Okay.
versus some contractors, the district does.
Does it-
They tell them who to get. And that's where some of the contracts may only pay 60%
Yeah.
on those days because the district does a lot of the work, whereas Cornshells does that for us even in that. So
Do you want me to wait to discussion or I just have some questions?
Me too.
We will, I'm
make a
gonna make a
motion.
motion to addend the Cornshell Bus Service contract. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
So I was just thinking, if we had a contract, I thought we had the contract that we would be paying 100%.
Yeah, I thought we discussed it in July.
Then we did this.
we're doing the
Why
4
was-
days. It only addressed those 4 days. It didn't address e-learning days or distance learning days. What we did in July was the 4 days that we took from off the end of the year and made them teacher development days. We agreed to pay 100% on those 4. We
But I
didn't
thought we
agree
had a
on any
contract.
snow e-learning days or if we're in distance learning for a whole period of time and the buses don't run. We just agreed to the 4 days.
I was under the impression that what we discussed in July was for this school year.
Don't we have a contract that's for the whole year and it's like kind of a 3-year contract or something?
Yeah, it's based off 170 days.
Yeah, so that
Right.
contract's not changing? That's the one you're saying we pay 85%?
That's the addendum that we're changing to 85%.
We're lessening it from 100 down to 85.
If we are,
If we are distance learning and the buses aren't running at all. That day, so for this week, if the buses don't run at all,
We'd still pay
we pay 85% of those, not 100%.
Don't they still have to run for the
No,
meals?
No, we just,
So all
no,
of us gonna
that,
pick them up.
that, if we do run the meals, we pay 100%.
Okay.
If they deliver and if they run, simple terms, if they run the buses, they get 100% of that day. If they don't run the buses, they get 85%. And the difference is the fuel savings that they're not using. Roughly.
Are we doing anything like we did for the principals where we paid them out for their extra work? What about the extra work they've been doing over and above their contract rerouting every week?
That's a discussion for you guys, I guess.
we did not, that was not part of our discussion. There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I
We do very much appreciate what Eric and Christie and their company does for the school.
And I will say, if we're completely shut down, I mean, we can take care of our drivers out of that, so, that was our number one commitment, and our number one thing when we came to you guys was, we need to make sure we have bus drivers for when we turn the light switch back on, so.
Yep.
We do appreciate the help, we do understand that it's hard to wrap your head around, if we're not actually providing a service for those days, it's a hard thing, but we have provided that service ahead of time. It's kind of a discussion we had with Scott and Sean and Mr. Malberg, and we're comfortable with that decision. So we want to say thank you guys too for taking care of the drivers, and that will be passed on to the drivers. That's they're getting paid just normally throughout the whole year, no matter what happens here. So they hopefully will be ready to go as soon as, no matter what happens, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. And the other piece of that too, when we met, that we talked about that special ed at the time, we weren't going to be able to pay them for special ed
Anything.
because we weren't going to get reimbursed for that. So that's going to help them out a lot too, because they're going to get that 95% on those special ed routes on those days too, which helps.
All right, we need to approve the 2021 teacher seniority list, which was enclosed in your packet. Is there a motion to approve the seniority list?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Last thing, for personnel was food service contract. We are in our 5th year, so we are going to request for proposals. And just an FYI, we are very happy with Aviance, so.
Yeah. They've done a good work for us, and the plan would be to have that RFP done to you guys and the board by December for renewal of the contract.
Yep.
Of the people who bid it, not to Aviance, but
Yeah.
we have been happy with Aviance, but we are submitting an RFP for other companies as well.
Is there any questions for personnel? All right, moving on. Policy.
Now it's gonna get exciting.
Okay.
No. Okay, we are on the second reading of MSBA changes to policies.
Back.
419,
Take your mask off.
419, and I'm just gonna tell you what they all were again. Tobacco-free environment, possession and use of tobacco, tobacco-related devices and electronic delivery devices, vaping awareness and prevention instruction. Number 516, student medication. 601, school district curriculum and instruction goals. 607, organization of grade levels. 522, sex non-discrimination policy, grievance procedure and process. And that's the second reading to those changes of policies.
Any questions for policy? Becky, it looks like you're up again. Budget.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair and Becky, Sean is the chair of this committee. Sean is quarantined today. So Becky, I'm just going to have Missy is going to present the audit to you guys as a board, and we'll go from there. So I'll turn it over to Missy Berry, our Director of Business Affairs.
All right.
Maybe. Missy.
It's coming. All right. You guys can see it okay? Okay, so this is just a brief overview of our audit. We met with our auditors last week for the final audit. So, first thing I'm gonna touch on is the pupil units. So as you can see, it goes from the year 2016 to 20. You can kind of see how we've been growing. 2019 and 2020, we kind of stabilized. We kind of started to that sweet spot. And just keep in mind, this is all this on the spreadsheet or on the slideshow is for last school year. So that's not going to reflect anything that's happening this fall or any of that. So that was pupil units. Now,
Missy, can you go back to that slide? Can you do
Yeah.
that real quick? Just highlight that. Notice that even though we stayed about the same, we have more kids in high school. So you have more dollars because you have a little bit more kids. You get more per ADM, per high school kid. So even though when you stayed the same, you do get a little bit more money for that high school. So just
okay, this slide is just showing you how we are at budget-wise. So again, if you look from 2016 to 2020, you'll be able to see the revenues and expenditures. So your blue is your revenues, your expenditures are in the red, and then the fund balance is in the green. Now, at the bottom, in the black box, you'll be able to see the amounts that are in our fund balance. The fund balance grew this year about 740,000. Now, this is gonna be due to a couple of things. One of the reasons that it grew was special ed. Special ed is a wild card. I mean, there's no way we can budget for special ed. It's all based on expenses from the year prior, and it's off some crazy formula that we would never be able to budget that. So we incurred about 300,000 more in special ed than what we had budgeted for. Now, the other portion of it is gonna be we were already projecting to be about 200,000 to the good. Now, you add that 300,000, the rest of it is gonna be some of the savings that we found during COVID, during the pandemic, when the building is shut down. So you have, less utilities, you have, sub costs. There's just other savings that were taking place that we didn't account for in the budget because who saw that coming? Any questions on this slide? Okay, this one is gonna show you some of the state resources for funding, for what we get. It'll have you'll see the amounts down at the bottom, how they changed from 2019 to 2020. It'll show you the state resources, federal, other local, and local property tax levies. And the local property tax levies were actually a little bit less than what we had budgeted, which is in the red. All right, expenditures. These are the expenditures that we had submitted by the end of the year. What's in the green is what was the final budget. 2020, the 2020 in the red is what was in my budget. But what's in the green was actually the reports that were sent to MDE. That's what was reported to the state. So you'll be able to see that, like, say, let's just start at the top at admin. We spent a little more in admin than what was budgeted. In instruction, again, the same thing. So you kind of see the trends as it goes down, how the funds are expended throughout the year, and what they went for.
What did we spend 300,000 in admin?
I can go back and take a
What
look.
question? I didn't hear that question, sir.
We spent an additional 300,000 in admin?
Seems really high.
I can go back and look at my report.
30,000, something like that. 300,000 is like,
I can go back and look.
Missy, did you say that right? I thought we spent more money on instruction than what we had budgeted.
well, I'm just looking at the numbers here of
Yeah, she's looking at the numbers at the bottom.
529 for the budgeted and final budget numbers that we spent is 868.
And the final budget in regular instructions actually a little less.
That's not the way we heard it in our meeting.
No.
with him. So I don't know about this chart for some reason. Like when we met for our final audit, he talked about spending more money. on
I think you
instruction.
got the colors mixed up, Missy.
Oh,
We
okay.
spent less on what we had budgeted.
Sure.
You got the colors mixed up because John shared with us that we spent more money on instruction than what we had budgeted. So you got the colors switched on your chart.
So, yeah, so the green is,
What we had budgeted and what the
Right.
blue is what we actually spent.
no, the red is what we actually spent.
Yes,
The blue is last year, the
Yes.
previous year.
there you go. So we actually spent $300,000 less on admin.
That would make me feel way better.
Yes, and we spent more money on we spent more money on instruction than what we had budgeted.
Yeah.
So the point is, when we budgeted what we were gonna spend on instruction, such as teacher salaries, we actually spent more money on teacher salaries because we added more throughout the year than what we had budgeted. So,
That's what I thought over the whole
Yes,
year,
you-
so that's why
you-
the number confused me
Yeah.
so much.
yes, we actually spent $300,000 less on admin costs.
I will double check.
So the reduction in admin cost was due to what?
Yeah, why would we have such a
And that, so that can include a number of things, like our, like the sub costs and everything, that can fall under administration, because they're not regular instruction. They don't fall into that category when it's called into the state. So they're more like support services, which would fall under more of the district support, and some of it would roll into the admin.
Yeah, you can't just think of admin as principal salaries
Yeah,
or
it's
superintendent.
not.
There's more than that to that. Could be counselor salaries. It could be, all those types of things are considered admin or different things. It's
And like the police liaison,
Yes,
we do
some
have
of
them
those
for
things.
2 months out of the year, so, all of those kind of fall into,
Yeah.
into some of those other categories, because they don't.
Sure,
fit
you're
into
sure.
the regular. All right. Fund balance. Now, based on what we just saw in the last couple of slides, you know that the fund balance grew from 2019 to 2020, so you're gonna see that. The important thing that we wanna recognize here is most of it is in the unassigned, so we can spend that how we need to. It's not restricted in certain buckets. And then
And what's our
this,
goal on fund balance?
actually, it's on this slide. So the goal is approximately 5 to 7%, so right now we're sitting at 19%, which is which is really good for us this year, means that we're projecting to be in the hole at the end of this year, so that'll help carry us.
We kind of got high so that we could, if we had incidentals come up during the building, we could have money set aside to
Yes.
do that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, which we have.
Well, and like Missy said, that we didn't anticipate to be $700,000 high. We anticipated to be 200 somewhere. Now that we're 700 though, it's actually a good thing because we're anticipating being $600,000 in the hole of lost revenue because of student loss this year. So by the end of the year, we'll be kind of right where we were, which in the other side of it would have been much worse because we'd have been back down to that 4 or 5%. So it's good that we came in at this point, because it'll offset what we see this year. We hope.
Okay, now, this one is just looking at the governmental funds in the department, so like the debt service, your building construction, food service, and community service. Obviously, building construction way high compared to last year, to be expected. And then those are the fund balances on your right, kind of small, but your fund balances in those departments, so your debt service is at 323, your building construction about 11.9 at the time of audit, and your food service about 298, and community service at 205. You know, you can't read that on there.
Missy and Becky, I forgot, but do you remember which one of those will kick in a second audit again?
That's, well, the federal sources. So if you make so much revenue in your federal sources, if it's over the 700,000, it kicks in a single audit. So because we received a little bit more in federal sources last year, we're gonna end up doing another single audit this fall. So they're gonna look at food service. So I've got another small audit to do yet before this year end. And we're probably gonna have it again next year because of the CARES funding that we're getting this year.
Yes.
So I'm gonna have to do it 2 years in a row for that single audit. All right, so that's what I have so far for the audit piece.
So, thank you, Missy, for your report. Is there a motion to approve the final audit review for 2019-2020 school year?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
We're sure that that's not a $300,000 difference the wrong way.
Yes, I'm sure.
It's not.
I'm positive. We spent more money on instruction than what we budgeted and less on admin. We just said the colors wrong.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And did you have any other?
I do have a couple more slides I just wanted to
Okay.
go over after that. I just wanted to give you guys an update on the CARES funding. So at the bottom, you'll be able to see we had the 3 categories of the funds that were allotted to us. We have the CRF, the ESSER, and the GEAR. CRF is the most important as of right now because we have to spend that down by December 31st of 20. So it has to be spent, invoiced, and paid and drawn by December 31st. And that was about 295,000. MDE came out and said that we had to spend 75% of those funds by 11/1. So districts who don't spend it and draw it by 11/1, that 75%, that those funds were going back into the pool and being redistributed amongst the other districts. So,
Oh, there's a bunch of districts that are hoping nobody pulls that.
right, yeah, so we went in and made our draw, so we're good. So that's, the dark blue is what was drawn, so we've got 25% that needs to be drawn by December 31st. Which we have an ongoing spreadsheet that will make that just fine. That's not gonna be an issue. We'll be able to draw that full amount. Now, I haven't drawn anything for ESSER and GEAR yet, mainly because I wanna see what I'm gonna draw for CRF, because CRF is a little more flexible with what we can expend to it. ESSER and GEAR is a little more specific to what can be spent in those categories. So I'm gonna expend what I need to out of CRF first, and then I'll work on the ESSER and GEAR after that one's done. And we have a longer deadline for that. That's not due until September 30th of 22. So we've got more time. So, and GEAR, if the ESSER can be more spent on instructional support, professional development, etc. GEAR is more technology related, so like our hotspots or anything that we need, any other services that we would need with our Chromebooks, etc. So that's where we're at with that. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on was our county taxes received. I know last spring, back in May, we had kind of discussed that we wanted to keep an eye on where we were going to be at in the fall. With the whole COVID, we knew that there were businesses and property owners that were having a hard time paying their property taxes and were going to be in the spring. So the spring, they weren't too worried about because that's kind of the beginning of the pandemic. They were more worried about what they were going to be able to draw at the end in the second half of the year. So far, we're doing okay. I mean, we're still above what we were last year, which would be, some of it is just because there's more people moving to the area. You have businesses growing in the area, so there's more taxes, more distribution amongst everyone. So both in Cass and Morrison County, we're right on track. So we haven't seen a loss in property taxes. So that's what I have. Any questions?
Missy, just to clarify, the CARES funding that we received was roughly how many, what was the total of that?
Well, the CRF is about 295. The ESSER was about 107, I believe it was. And then GEAR was another like 50 grand.
So it was just about, what, 450,000
Yeah,
total?
around 400. Yeah.
So if we went to receive that $450,000 in this funding, that $600,000 deficit was going to be over $1 million deficit this year. So this helps offset that $1 million deficit that we have going this year. Otherwise, we'd have been in even worse shape this year. So when we talk about that fund balance, that 5 to 7%, that rainy day, you saw just how something quickly can change. In a year, you lose 50 kids one year that you don't know, that you don't plan on down the road. All of a sudden, you budgeted $1 million. That's why you need to have that rainy day unreserved fund balance, because anything can happen. But luckily, we did get some money back from the CARES, but if they went to come through with that fund balance as unreserved balance is very important to have, because that's your rainy day.
We've been on the flip side.
Yes.
It's not.
So it's important to keep that nice fund balance at that 10% for that one year can go like that. 1 year can, you have 70 kids that all of a sudden walk out your doors that don't come back for some reason. You budgeted those $700,000 and you got those staff here to do that. And you got to pay them.
And they're tenured, they're not
Yep.
going nowhere.
Some of them.
Some of them.
Right.
Is there any other questions for Missy? Thank you very much. Great job. And thank you, Mike. Moving on, we need, in your board packet, we need to approve the resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts. That is a roll call vote, so I need a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
I'll start on my left. Sarah?
Aye.
Becky?
aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Aye. That resolution passes.
Wrong lane, Ken.
We need to talk about our January reorganizational regular school board meeting. January 28th is Martin Luther King Day. We need to consider either January 11th or 25th are the dates presented. Is there preference on any of those dates?
We've tended to do the Monday before,
Sure,
which would be the 11th.
Okay.
So
sounds fine.
you want to set that, that would include, obviously Cassie and Cassandra and Randy, so.
Okay.
Set it for January 11th.
Is there a motion to move the regular reorganization school board meeting from January 18th to January 11th?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And just a reminder, no school for Thanksgiving break on November 25, 6, and 7. And now we need to have a discussion, activities discussion while we are in distance learning.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just something that we talked really brief about on the incident command team meeting last week was continuing activities in distance learning or not. I know it's very a troublesome conversation to have as board members and as superintendent and as a community. It's went around the table on several conversations with superintendents in the meetings that I've attended. I know of some districts that have said that they were going to continue as long as they could. I've had other districts such as Brainerd who have decided to do varsity only if they are in distance learning. There are other districts such as Rochester, St. Peter, Belle Plaine, Hibbing, several others that have decided if they're in distance learning, they're not having activities. And that's based off of the safe reopening plan of MDE in the fall, which stated if you move to distance learning due to COVID, you're not supposed to have activities. Well, that was in August, obviously, and you know that the Minnesota State High School League came out and changed that decision to allow schools to kind of do it as their own. Now, there is some conversation that I've heard that Minnesota State High School League may push back winter season. I don't know if that will happen or not. I have real legitimate concerns of my number one. I'm a big activities guy. I was in everything under the sun in school. I coached, but as a superintendent and as I owe it to my community and my kids to try to be in school, having activities, especially in the lower levels, defeats that purpose. I had to quarantine 3 staff members and 50 kids because of an outbreak on junior high volleyball. It's hard to keep kids in the building when it spreads at a function such as an activity. So I know it's not a very popular stance, but I'm torn. I brought that up to the incident command team last week. It's a hard decision, but in my heart, it tells me if it means keeping my elementary kids or my middle school kids in person at some point, I have a little bit more of a soft spot for a varsity sport. If you're a senior or a junior, you tend not to have very many activities left. If you're a 4th grader or a 7th grader and you're playing basketball or volleyball, you got a few more years yet to do that. My recommendation to you guys would be at this point, unless the State High School League pushes those start dates back, would be to, if we are in distance learning, to only do varsity, similar to what Brainerd's doing. That would be my recommendation, but it's ultimately your guys' choice. You're the ones that will take the heat, as I will do as well, from organizations such as Let Them Play. There's a big movement out there for that as well. It's hard, we all want kids to be healthy and happy and being part of stuff. And that's part of that SEL and mental health of letting kids do those things. But honestly, when I sit in that room and try to keep kids here, that junior high conversation and 9th grade conversation isn't helping me keep kids here. So that's my recommendation.
What are the anticipated start dates?
What are they? Well, some started today, such as dance team,
Junior high basketball was November 30th.
November 30th for junior high basketball, and I think, I'm not sure about varsity basketball. They spread out, but for us, it's basketball and obviously wrestling is at Brainerd, and some activities we go to Little Falls for. Little Falls is struggling with that same conversation today. I know Steve is having that conversation about if they should continue because they're having even a tougher time keeping kids in than we are. I think he shut down an elementary school today. He was going to. So that's my recommendation. We don't have to act on it today.
Do you think MTE will say anything else besides what they said in
I-
August?
I don't know. I was on a phone conversation with Ron Kresha, the representative from Little Falls, and the point that we made to him was Minnesota State High School League and the MDH and MDE, they don't talk to anybody. They don't talk to each other. Minnesota State High School League came out and said we were not going to do fall activities. Then when everybody got upset and petitioned and threatened lawsuits, they then reached out to MDH and said, Department of Health, you were the ones that told us not to do this. And then MDH ran away and said, well, we're not going to stick by what we said, so you guys can do what you want to do. So the last I heard from Eric Martins of the State High School League was, we're not going to touch that because we didn't get supported or back last time. Now, I heard today that they had a special meeting at the State High School League. So maybe they're going to do some pushback on that. I also heard the Governor Walz is going to have some more mandates coming next week. I don't know what those are going to be. We got time to think about that. But I am going to be very honest with you. Junior high basketball, fourth grade basketball, most of those people are my coaches, are my teachers. And when they quarantine because of an event at a game, I can't keep them here to staff it. And that's troublesome to me. It really boils down to, do you want kids in school learning or not? And I'm okay either way. I'm just giving you my recommendation because I sit there trying to keep kids in school. And that doesn't help me do that. And if you're okay with that, then I'm okay with that. But we can have a conversation with the incident command team tomorrow night. We also have some time.
We're not going to have another board meeting.
We'd have to have a special board meeting to do that. Unless you decide tonight, you do also remember you have two board members that aren't here that may have a conversation on that or an idea of what that.
I did
hard
reach
to
out
imagine
one,
you're not
and I
going to
wasn't
school.
able to reach the other. I know one is in, I don't want to say he supports not having junior high sports. He wants to, but he understands it. And I would agree with you, Superintendent Mulder. I'm the sports guy. I want those kids playing, but I understand it. Our priority, our goal is to have them in school. And we haven't had the best luck with the junior high volleyball.
And also how to get them here. Oh, now I have to drive my kid to school at 3:00. I can't get them to school, and now parents have to come, and some can come if their parents can drive them, and others can't.
I'm gonna ride with a junior or senior in a pile of cars with kids that don't get traced.
Yeah, I don't know, getting here is a problem too.
Yeah.
And then,
The,
If we shift to hybrid, that's a different conversation, than distance learning. Hybrid, they're still coming a few days a week. We're able to contact trace. It is troublesome with, we've encouraged our teams not to ride the buses to games if they can. Or, some of them can ride with their parents because that helps, maybe only taking some of those kids that have to or don't have their parents riding. We've had other school districts in the area that have had to shut down a whole team because the team rode the bus for over 30 minutes. So that was some of the issues that a lot of them are having.
There's nothing to say too that we couldn't. I mean, football was a late start. I don't know if it was 2 weeks late, 3 weeks late. If things get better, end of December.
Well, we can always bring them back.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
Because as a parent of one of those kids who got sent home on the volleyball quarantine, that I've had more quarantine people in my house than probably all of us. It's ridiculous. Anyway, and nobody's got it. We've all tested positive, negative. Grace, 9 times now, 9. Watching Jack get more and more and more unhealthy every day, because not only mental health wise, he's not in school. Physically, he's not doing anything because he's sitting in front of a computer all day, which is not good for him either way. So I understand it, but I don't like it. And I will find something else for him to, he has to do something. He has to. So I'll be finding something else for him to do that.
Are we prepared to
I don't feel prepared to make a decision. I don't know.
not?
I don't know that I feel prepared to decide at the moment. I feel like Brainerd's the only person or the only district that's made a call
At this,
on that,
in this
right?
area, many others across the state have canceled.
Well, because at this point, we don't even know if other schools would be having games or if it'd just fully be an in-house thing, even, because no
Right.
one else is calling.
Well, and the problem is nobody wants to be the first person.
And I don't either.
That's the problem.
I
So,
might feel like we need another meeting in a couple weeks, depending on what is happening. I don't know.
I
It's
agree
tough.
with you, but I also.
Yeah.
the numbers aren't going down,
respect what
Becky.
Superintendent
you know.
Malberg is stating. Our focus is classroom, or it should be. I get it, Becky. I want basketball more than most here.
Well, has MDE changed their guidance to where if you're in distance learning, you can have activities? Because their rule says you can't.
They have not. It
So-
says there's safe reopening plan, and that's why many of the districts have canceled.
So
Right.
doesn't that mean that if we keep activities and kids get sick and they give it to their grandparents die or something, that the school is legally responsible, that we're not covered?
I don't
Because
think
we're
we
not
can be responsible.
going, we aren't following the MDE rules? Because we had that discussion on
Right.
some other subject.
That was through, well, that was when Brainerd's legal representation advised them not to.
Yeah.
Then they changed based off of Anoka. Anoka Hennepin challenged that with the State High School League and MDE and the State Department of Health. And they came out and said, Anoka, you can do so if you choose to. They left it up to the individual school district. So,
Can we just delay the
So-
start of them until after the December meeting? And decide then?
Then you're gonna have to cancel the dance right now.
well, junior high starts on the 30th. I don't know, I don't know exactly when their games start, you know,
They didn't give us a schedule for that.
yeah.
And you're just wanting to say not the youth sports and not the junior high, but you still want to do varsity.
I would say my recommendation at this point would be similar to what Brainerd has decided, is to keep varsity as long as we can.
So
at
we're
this
still
point.
going against MDE, because they say no sports with distance. I mean, just thinking of who we're going with.
Didn't
You know,
they change
MDE
with
would say
football though?
no varsity.
That was Minnesota State High School League, but that wasn't distance learning. That was the State High School League said you can have them now. That was when you were open. Now we're shifting to distance learning. We can't have kids here. It's, I mean, I have mixed feelings sometimes, am I doing the right thing? Am I recommending the right thing? I've had conversations with many of my friends that are probably looking at me sitting at this table across from me right now, wondering what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. But I also know that I sit here and try to keep kids in school, and the reason I'm not is because of that. Because of the way the rules are written and what I have to follow, I can't keep kids in school. It isn't that I don't want to have them. It's the way the rules are written, and I didn't write the rules. I'm just enforcing the rules that I have to follow. And in order to do that, I can't keep the staff members here because they're quarantined. And that's not going to help me if I have junior high sports or lower level sports.
But it
Well,
kind of
one
makes the same
varsity,
for
I mean, it's
varsity.
risk in varsity too.
But you're a lot less kids, a lot less people contact tracing.
Mhm. Yep.
Varsity kids tend to, I don't know if I should say that or not.
No,
If you have to think about it, don't.
Well, middle school kids tend to migrate more, not always.
Middle school girls.
Well, there are varsity athletes too, varsity kids that when we don't have school, they call each other and learning and doing the job that I feel is the most important. Doesn't mean I don't value basketball and wrestling and
so,
everything else.
and if we did that and you could add it back, we'd add it back, right?
Correct.
Because just like Minnesota State High School League said, you can't do this, and then 2 weeks later, by the way, everybody gets a 3-week season.
Well, or as a
So
board,
we could change
Which
our
we
mind
did
in
for
2
fall
weeks.
sports.
or as a board, we could just vote to let Mr. Holmberg make a decision.
So you're gonna pass the
Like
buck
that
to me.
pressure?
Is there a motion for junior high or winter activities?
Yeah, there wasn't an action item on this.
Can we make it
You
an action
can,
item?
well, no, you
No.
can't.
Cannot.
We can't.
No. Oh,
Okay.
relief.
All
So,
that
I
we
don't
went through. we can't-
but so
We have a
technically, we would probably need to have another meeting prior to November 30th.
You'd have to do it shortly.
Yep.
You gotta have
Well,
it
and did
posted
you
5
say
days.
Somebody
3 days.
is coming out to speak. Who's next week?
Well, I believe there may be an announcement this week that may tell us. The decision may be made for us.
Between the governor and between Minnesota
State High School League, because they were meeting today, State High School League. So
And the
let's
governor could announce.
see where that goes, and I'll schedule a meeting where we can have a special meeting for that and discuss it.
First junior high basketball game is on the 11th.
Of December.
All right, moving on, superintendent's report.
All right, strategic plan document and measurement tool. We started working on a piece of that. Obviously, we don't have a lot of spare time to do that, but we are in the process of trying to develop a measurement tool that will kind of keep us going on what pieces of that strategic plan have we accomplished, what are we still working on, what haven't we done. So I plan to hopefully get that to the board sometime here, late winter or early spring. I know many of you maybe have heard the Galcerin family, who we have 3 students here in school. They have Tristan, who's 10, Josiah, who's 6, and Liam, who's 5. They lost their house last night in a fire in Baxter. They lost everything. They were gone for the weekend, celebrating a birthday at a hotel, and got a phone call that they lost everything other than what they had with them. So we are doing some donations here at school, but just wanted to let them know that the Pillager Husky family
What's
is
the name?
Galcerin, Galceran. They live in Baxter.
And how old were the kids?
10, 6, and 5. And they are taking donations for clothing and different things like that. Ashley, our social worker, is somebody people can reach out to for something like that. I don't know if they have a GoFundMe page, but we are taking donations too at the school and the elementary office for them. Just let them know that wanted to let them know that the Pillar Husky family is thinking of them, and hopefully we'll help take care of them in this time. So it's a bad time to have that happen. I have a meeting scheduled with CTC and John Gordon, our facility services manager, to start thinking about planning for grand opening of the CTC Center, which would occur next fall. That would include what does that weekend look like with acts, concerts, things like that. So we've started that conversation. MSBA conference is virtual this year. It's 3 days. So if you want to sit at a computer for 3 days, let me know. We'll sign you up. So that was all I had, an announcement on that.
I think Randy does.
There.
Yeah.
I sold my computer at the garage sale.
Yeah.
I got them set up for phase 1 and phase
I was
2.
gonna
So,
say-
well, Randy hasn't gotten back to me yet. But you guys, they get 6 hours of sitting by a computer for that. So I think they'll be screened out by that time.
Sorry, Mike.
Board members, I also will be sending out an email to you guys just to have some ideas that I have on committee restructuring for next year, for the restructuring of the committees. So I'll get that out to you guys. Just some thoughts there. And then World's Best Workforce meeting, we will do in December, right before our other meeting. We got some guidance from them, so we'll have to have a district leadership team meeting and then present our goals, which will probably be exactly the same goals, but we have to have that meeting. So we'll set up that meeting in December, right before our other annual meeting like we have to do. So that's all I have, unless you have some questions.
Now we'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
All right. I've always wanted to